So diving into Minerva McGonagall. Minerva McGonagall was born, may it be noted that a year is not stated by J.K. Rowling, but she was born on October 4th, whatever year that was. Now we know that she's fairly older because she has been around Dumbledore for quite some time, and she's been around the Ministry, she's been around Hogwarts, so she's been around for a minute. And she was raised in the Highlands of Scotland. Her mother was a witch who married a Presbyterian minister, keeping the knowledge of her witchhood a secret from him. So her entire childhood, Minerva was very familiar with the aspect of somebody, a muggle, not knowing your true identity, what a toll that can take on your relationships, and everything that involves. The kind of sternness of the muggle world as she viewed it, because if you've ever been in the Presbyterian religion, it will be very strict, sort of Catholic. So it is a very stern, strict religious lifestyle. And it's noted by J.K. Rowling that Minerva got her talent from her mother, but she got her strength of character from her father, i.e. her sternness. So her mother was very talented at Hogwarts. She was a celebrated witch in her years. And Minerva, when she was born, from a very early age, started showing signs of magic. Her mom would actually seclude herself in her bedroom for sometimes days at a time, and people would just kind of tell her dad, it's just because your mom, she just had a baby, don't worry about it. But the real reason was because Minerva was already starting to use her magical ability. This came out a little more strongly later on when she went to Hogwarts, and she was noted very early to be the first in her year and in her class, and had very strong skills of transfiguration, which later interpreted into her being transformed into a tabby cat with spectacle markings around her eyes. So right from the very beginning, we have a very talented, very powerful, very charismatic character of Minerva based off of her background and her education. So we've got a pretty strong character background here that J.K. Rowling has only barely tipped the iceberg of. Later on, we'll go to see her grow more in her strength and her bravery, which is why she was actually placed in Gryffindor. One noteworthy thing about Minerva's background is that even though she is the head of Gryffindor and was placed in Gryffindor, in her year she was one of only 2 students who produced what is called a hat stall, which is when the hat takes more than 5 minutes to decide which house she should be in. In fact, the other student that was in the same situation as her was placed in the opposite house as the hat was considering placing her, Slytherin. So when we think about McGonagall and how she acts, none of us are probably too surprised that she was almost placed in Slytherin, but it's noteworthy to take into consideration the fact that the hat really took a minute to decide about her and ended up placing her in Gryffindor. Her courage and her bravery were outstanding, and ultimately, that's what led the case. So we have both of those. We've got the hat stall, we've got our innate ability as her own being, we've got her rich background from both her Muggle dad and her witch mother on her ability to kind of navigate both worlds. And then we bring in Harry Potter. So we bring in Harry Potter, and we're first introduced to McGonagall through Harry Potter because she is sitting outside the Dursleys' house seeing all of their anti-witch wizarding crap that they do, and she comes to realize they are the worst sort of muggle. And growing up in the Highlands of Scotland in a Presbyterian small village, she will have known precisely what the worst sort of muggle really is. So she has perhaps maybe a very deep sympathy, though she may not completely acknowledge it at first, with Harry, for him growing up in this environment that was very anti-wizard and anti-anything unusual. Even though her herself was very anti-unusual and very strict, thanks to her dad's influence, who she was actually closer to than her mom, which is kind of interesting because, she spent more time around her mom, so you would have thought that she would have been closer to her. Anyways, so she's got kind of this understanding of how the Dursleys are, how their lifestyle is. And when Dumbledore brings Harry, she has probably her most empathetic argument with Dumbledore, and it can't really even be called an argument, but this is a testament to how much she trusts Dumbledore, and that she really believes that he knows what's best. So ultimately, she trusts him, though she does not want Harry to stay with these people because they're awful, and she knows that it won't be good. So at the end of the day, she trusts Dumbledore, but she does state her reserves from the very beginning, which I think is noteworthy. So we have set up in the Sorcerer's Stone Professor McGonagall, who is an incredible character, very, very rich character. She has so much strength behind her, and she has so much charisma behind her that I think she's really, really cool to watch and observe. And later on, we'll see her get to do some really cool things. So stick around, and maybe we'll tear apart that later on. Thanks, and don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe to FemiNerdity.
So, today I'm going to be talking about the Mirror of Erised. So, it shows the deepest desire of our hearts, but not your face. So, for example, Coral wants the stone, but he can't get the stone. And for another example, Harry wants to bring his family back. So, sometimes it shows the impossible, but sometimes it only wrecks the people that it's impossible. You got that? Okay. See ya. This is Matthew Gold signing out. Bye!
Okay, so Nicholas Flamel, I think that's how you say his name. He was a scribe who lived in the 14th century. So this is all like real life first draft with the real life stuff. So he's a scribe who lived in the 14th century. Apparently was pretty well off because he owned 2 shops, and then he married a really wealthy woman named, let's see, Flamel. I think that's how you say it. And so they were even more wealthy. Apparently they were really well known for charity and philanthropy in their later life, and they donated a lot of statues and engravings and stuff to churches, which is part of the mystery, or what some people consider the mystery of the Flamels. So apparently what started the rumor that he was an alchemist was he died and they buried him, and then later some grave robbers came, dug up his grave, and they didn't find a body, so they assumed that he must be an alchemist. He must have created the Philosopher's Stone and has eternal life, because that's a logical thing to do. So he then reappeared, his name reappeared in like the 17th century, and they because there was a work that was published under his name that was talking about alchemy and different interpretations of I think it's called hieroglyphics, something about hieroglyphics, and so when that was published, everyone started talking about him again. Apparently his name became so famous in the alchemist and scientific community that even I'm blanking on his name, Isaac Newton mentioned him in one of his books, which is really crazy. And then course, so that legend of him being an alchemist carried on into works of fiction, because who doesn't love someone who found the source of eternal life? So not only is he in Harry Potter, but he was in The Hunchback of Notre Dame. He's in The Da Vinci Code. He's in Full Metal Alchemist. He's in a couple others. I think it was As Above, So Below is the one that there was something they were talking about. But anyways, so yeah, a lot of people brought him up, and we're just like kind of in like romanced by this idea of someone who had created eternal life. So anyways, in Harry Potter, Nicholas Flamel is the creator of the Philosopher's Stone. He is true to his real life timeline. So he was born in the 14th century and has still been alive. He went, according to the Harry Potter world, he went to the French Academy. I cannot pronounce that name, so please do not ask me to do that. Beauxbaton. And anyways, so then that's where he met his wife, and they got married and had a great life, and he invented the Philosopher's Stone, and he met Dumbledore somewhere around the 1890s. And then, yeah, they've been good friends ever since. They've been notable good friends, and they are, like, everybody knows their name, Nicholas's name. Everybody knows where he lives. He apparently isn't very afraid that someone is going to steal the Philosopher's Stone from him or steal the elixir of life from him, because everybody knows his address, and he's kind of just living in retirement right now. And yeah, so that's where he's at, and that's the history of Nicholas Flamel.
Okay, so today I am going to talk about Quidditch. There is a lot about Quidditch in chapters 7 through 13 in the Sorcerer's Stone, but I'm just going to go over some of it, and then about Quidditch's role in the wizarding world is kind of what I really wanted to talk about. So we first mention Quidditch when they're about to have flying lessons and everybody's excited, and Neville gets hurt, of course, during the lesson, and Malfoy steals his Remembrall and flies up, and Harry chases him, which is against the rules because there's no adults watching them right now. They're supposed to stay on the ground or face expulsion, but of course that doesn't happen. So Harry chases Malfoy, and Malfoy throws the Remembrall, and Harry has to catch it, and he dives really far to catch it and lands great. And McGonagall, who is probably the most strict teacher on the campus, happens to see him, and she comes out, and you think that he's going to be expelled, and instead she is thrilled. She tells Harry to go with her right now, and then when they get alone, she asks if that was his first time on a broom, and takes her to meet the Gryffindor Quidditch captain. Takes him to meet the Gryffindor Quidditch captain, Oliver Wood. And so after she introduces him to Wood, she says she's going to speak to Professor Dumbledore and see if we can't bend the first year rule. So at this point, we see that athletes in the wizarding world are treated much like athletes in the real world, in that there are allowances made for them and special circumstances, and even a professor as strict as Professor McGonagall will bend the rules for sports. She also says, like, she says she couldn't look Professor Snape in the eye for weeks after their last match, after Gryffindor lost to Slytherin. So there's obviously big rivalry in Quidditch, just like in sports in the real world, and so something that's common there. She also gets a broom for Harry and has it sent through the post to him, but tells him to open it in private as to not cause a commotion. And then Malfoy catches him on the way out with the broom and tells on him and tells Professor Flitwick. And Professor Flitwick gets very excited and says, yes, that's right. Professor McGonagall told me all about the special circumstances. What model is it? So pretty much all the teachers are on board with the athletes getting special attention. So then later it goes on, and Wood explains Quidditch, and they have their first match, which I'm not actually going to go into because it's a reread, so we all know what happens. And if you haven't read the books, you should. I'm not going to spoil it for you. But anyway, the one really cool thing about Quidditch that I like is that it is co-ed. So unlike, sports like soccer and basketball and pretty much most major sports in the Muggle world, the genders are not separated. Anyone can play Quidditch. They play together. Your athletic ability has nothing to do with your gender, which I thought was really cool of Rowling to write. So anyway, it's obviously a big deal. It's been played in the wizarding world for almost 1,000 years, and the Quidditch World Cup is played pretty much every 4 years since 1473. And I'm sure we will talk more about Quidditch and the Quidditch World Cup when we get to book 4. So that's it for today.